shooting animals, or especially birds, just didn't give me the creative juice I was after. Hi, I'm Shaul. It just dawned on me that there is one group of photographers who really keep the photographic industry going, that justifies all this R&D effort manufacturers make. It's a small group. I'm talking about bird photographers. Bird photography represents the extreme end of requirements from the gear. You are never close enough to your subject. So one thing you hear bird photographers talk about a lot is reach. That doesn't only include super telephoto lenses that give you magnification. It also means high pixel density, so you can crop after the fact. Indeed, almost every decent bird photograph is cropped. You need to allow the bird to take a larger part of the final image. That, of course, puts constraints on the quality of the glass used for that purpose. Lenses used in bird photography are very lucrative. They have to be extremely sharp and very well corrected in order to minimize all sorts of aberrations. Shutter speeds have to be quite high. It is not unusual to use a shutter speed of 1/2000 of a second. So low light performance or ISO performance has to be very good too. You need to be able to obtain, or at least images where you can remove the noise during processing. Another thing is burst rate. In bird photography, you have very little control over the scene, over your subject. And birds tend to move quite unpredictably, quite erratically. So if you try to capture a bird in flight, you need to increase the probability of making at least one good photo. So you need quite a high rate of burst in continuous shooting. Mechanical shutters in most cameras are limited to around 10 frames per second, more or less. So you need to use electronic shutter in order to significantly increase the probability of capturing the right moment. And unfortunately, electronic shutters have some trade-offs. You need a very fast scan rate in order for the bird, your subject, to look aberration-free, to avoid any type of rolling shutter that might skew the bird. So stacked sensor cameras that have an extremely short scan time are much preferred for this genre. Another issue is autofocus. You need a camera that has a very reliable autofocus and very good predictive algorithms in order to keep the subject nice and sharp in the frame. So overall, we are talking about the very state-of-the-art of photographic technology that is required to make consistently good bird photographs. On the other hand, let's talk about the requirements from the photographer, the skill level needed to achieve good bird photography. I might be a little stereotypical here, so take what I'm going to say with a grain of salt. Bird photography doesn't require a high skill level from the photographer. All you need to do is position your camera, preferably on a tripod, in the right direction. You don't need to move the camera. You don't need to be dynamic in any sense. You don't need any special eye or vision to produce good photographs of birds. It's really a low energy, low skill genre. A lot of the result depends solely on the gear you use and on luck, of course. But having a good camera and a good lens that is long enough, sharp enough, corrected enough, will increase your probability of making a good photograph dramatically. You really depend on the quality of the gear, and in that case, quality equals price. The more you spend, the better bird photographer you might be. All you need to do is be physically next to the camera and shoot a burst at the right moment and hope that one of the resulting photographs would be good enough, that it will capture the bird at the right time to show its colors, its the texture of its feathers at their full glory. Arguably, nowadays you don't even need that. A camera like the Nikon Z9 has some advanced triggering capabilities. You can simply set a trigger. Whenever the camera detects a bird in the frame, it takes a burst, or even multiple bursts in intervals. For doing that, you don't need any photographic skill, except, of course, being able to operate the camera. Despite low skill level needed, bird photography is quite competitive because the probability of achieving a good result is low. And good photographs of birds, especially small birds, are rather rare. Try to look on the internet for photographs of hummingbirds in flight, and you will see that there are not many good photos. You have to be very lucky to achieve a good result. Because it's such a technical thing, a lot of the photographers involved in this genre, are quite tech savvy. They are typically middle-aged. You need quite a lot of spare income to invest in the right gear. And it is not unheard of that bird photographers might spend $10,000 or so every year in order to buy the best cameras and the best lenses, the newest ones. That might increase the chances, might decrease the dependence on sheer luck. Not many people have this type of resources. Many of those photographers are quite trigger happy. By that I mean they are willing to depart from large sums of money to invest in that hobby. Camera manufacturers are thriving to satisfy this group of photographers, as small as it might be, because this genre really puts a high demand on the equipment, on the capabilities of cameras and lenses. A very small improvement in the probability of capturing a good bird photo is translated into sales. If your current new top-of-the-line camera increases that probability from 10% to 11%, you are going to sell a lot of cameras of this model. If your new 600 millimeter lens is equipped with an internal teleconverter, you are going to sell a lot of units, relatively speaking, of course. Many of those bird photographers are going to buy the very new gear to support their chances. And this is what drives the competition between camera manufacturers. Cameras made for bird photographers are very expensive. The cost of a fast stacked sensor that is also compensated for dynamic range is very high. The production of such sensors is currently 4 or 5 times more expensive, more costly than a regular back illuminated sensor. So naturally, manufacturers put a lot in those cameras. Those cameras have the best electronic viewfinders. They have the best weather sealing. They have perhaps the most comfortable ergonomics. And they also have the best detailed, high-resolution video compared to everything else on the market. This is why 8K video is even a thing. 8K is obviously not needed. You can't really tell the difference between an 8K video and a 4K video. Those other perks that are part of those high-end cameras might attract other photographers too, like adventure photographers who need a good weather sealing, or videographers who like the idea of having high-resolution video without any rolling shutter concerns. We have to draw a line somewhere between casual shooters who don't have any special requirements, for whom the capabilities of standard cameras are a lot cheaper, and specialized photographers who need those state-of-the-art extreme capabilities. If you're a casual shooter, like most of us are, you don't need those crazy burst rates. A mechanical shutter would be perfectly adequate for your purposes. You don't need such a high correction level in your lenses. In fact, maybe you would rather use more modest optics that are better in representing the reality as we see it with our eyes, that has a more rounded, more dimensional rendering. If you don't engage in color grading of your videos, you probably don't need those specialized video capabilities. You can probably be perfectly fine with the video capabilities offered by more modest cameras. And chances are that your video work will look better, more cinematic, because it's less crisp, less detailed, less sharp, painfully sharp. There is a penalty involved in using over-capable gear. And I'm not only talking about the cost of the gear itself. It's also the amount of storage you need, the amount of time you have to put into processing those huge files. Currently, there's a trade-off between readout speed of the sensor and dynamic range, for instance. Stacked sensors help with the processing power of the cameras. They can crunch large amounts of data in a short while. But more of the surface of those sensors is dedicated to buffering that data, and less of the surface area of the sensor is dedicated to actually capturing light. So there is a penalty in dynamic range that is obvious. If you look at the only consumer camera available on the market with a global shutter, the Sony Alpha 9 III, it has the equivalent dynamic range of an APS-C sensor, despite being a full-frame camera. If you are salivating over one of those state-of-the-art cameras, well, you might think again. It's not only that you don't need those capabilities, not really, not in real life, not in the type of photography you actually do. There might be penalties involved if you, by mistake, get yourself into the territory of that very advanced, very capable camera technology. Personally, I was never interested in bird photography, nature photography. I'm a biologist by trade, and I'm very interested in natural world. In fact, I do some research in the field, But by nature, I'm not really into details. I'm more interested in systems, in ecology, in the interactions between multiple factors affecting the behavior of species. That is reflected in the type of photography I do as a hobby. I'm a wide lens person. Back in the early 80s, I used to learn English with my grandmother. You might think it's not really apparent that I put extra effort into my English, but that's entirely my fault. I didn't appreciate those English lessons with my grandma. My poor English is not her fault by any means. It was just that at the time I was more interested in playing football with my friends than sitting for 2 hours with my grandma once a week. Anyway, during those English sessions, we used to look at National Geographic magazines. My parents were subscribed to it. So every week we picked one article and read it together. Now, I remember the adverts in those magazines. Canon used to have an advertising campaign for its lenses, the long telephotos, the white ones, dedicated to nature photography. And I used to salivate over those very nice, large optics. But when I actually started to do my own photography a few years later, I lost interest. Shooting animals, or especially birds, just didn't give me the creative juice I was after. I enjoyed shooting people. I enjoyed interacting with my subjects. I enjoyed moving. I enjoyed the dynamism of documentary photography. Shooting wild animals was in many ways like fishing. I didn't have the patience, the discipline, and the required equipment really to do that. And that is still the case, even now, after all these years. I think that there is much more to photography than being an observer and documenting the appearance of things. Photography is also about conveying experiences, emotions, which is not exactly the focus in wildlife photography. Right, I think that will be all for today. If you like that video, if you find it interesting or useful in any way, please consider buying me a coffee. It's a nice gesture between gentlemen. You will find the link in the description below. Thank you for watching and see you again soon.